So tell us, how did the Santa experience begin? Like what was the catalyst for it?
How it started was when I had my son, his first Christmas, I took him to the mall to see Santa. It was a generic mall Santa. They stuck him in his lap. He screamed. They took a blurry picture, and then they were trying to sell me this blurry picture of my kid with Santa, and I was like, hey, this is not going to do. I'm going to put him back in Santa's lap, and you're going to take one that's clear. And so after that, I was like, I can do a better experience. Like, I can give people a fun, beautiful, pleasant experience that's, you're not waiting in line, and it's not just somebody standing behind the camera. You know, it's a beautiful piece that you keep year after year after year, and you come back year after year after year.
Right. And from that point, like how many years ago was that you started doing the experience?
It was 14 years ago.
Wow. And obviously it's evolved over time.
Very much so.
And grown. Mm-hmm. So during those first years, if you were going to tell our viewers today some little tips that saved you time, like what are some front of mind, like I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do this, I did this instead?
I think one of the things that has always been big for me is people don't need 30 minutes with Santa Claus. So doing a whole 30-minute thing with Santa Claus is just not necessary. Most people just want a quick interaction with Santa, and I learned that over time. So offering that quick come and go, click moment with Santa, where you still capture beautiful images with Santa, beautiful interactions with Santa. They're not there for the long haul. You're not making kids miserable. Their attention span is super short, so if you can get in, get what you need, and move on, it tends to work the best with Santa.
Yeah, and just to give everybody an idea of the volume, and I'm sure we'll talk more about this, you're doing how many in 2 weekends?
In 2 weekends, I will do over 400 kids with Santa.
Wow, did everybody hear that? 400 kids in 2 weekends.
Kids.
But you, when we were talking about this, I kind of went, whew, that's a lot. But you responded, you're like, no, this is like my favorite 2 weekends because it's so fast paced.
It's super fast paced. I know a majority of the kids, so I get to see everybody. Everybody has a different experience with Santa.
Yeah.
I get to see a lot of the same kids year after year, which is wonderful too, because their interaction with Santa also changes over the years. So I've watched a lot of kids who they went from a baby newborn with Santa loving on them, to a scared toddler, to a really happy teenager. I mean, and I still have teenagers who are, you know, my son still comes, but I have other teenagers who this is the same Santa. Their moms want the same picture, so they still come.
Well, of course it's the same Santa.
Yes.
There's only one Santa.
There's only one Santa, and I have him.
Right, yep, and he's yours.
And he's mine.
And that's good leverage to have.
It is great leverage to have.
And another thing before we move on here that I want people to understand is, you know, you talk about this being, you know, an elevated experience with that type of quantity, but the detail that you're putting in and how you know the kids, you know what they asked for last year, you're transferring that to Santa. He's able to process that and keep that magic in a 5-minute session or 3-minute session. That's incredible. That is skill right there.
It is. It's an acquired skill.
Yeah,
so
I'm
I
sure.
didn't start out that way, but over the years I've learned what works and what doesn't work, and learning what works is what helps a lot.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So another thing that I think is insanely cool about this, if I can just describe it that way, is that you have designed this program as a client thank you.
Yes.
And you are not available, or Santa's not available for people who are not current clients until current clients have the opportunity.
Right.
So can you talk about how that schedule works a little bit?
So a couple of years ago, I was like, this is a great way to say thank you to my clients who are loyal to me, who, you know, book a session every year. This gives them an opportunity to come see Santa for free, and for me to capture their kids one more time. It gets me on their brain one more time before the end of the year. Like, oh yeah, I need to go ahead and get on your books for the spring or for next year. But it also is just a way to say thank you that is unique and different.
Yeah.
The way that I've expanded on it is once I do open it to the public, what the public does charge, and what I charge the public ends up covering the costs that I would, normally have with a client thank you event.
Right.
So.
And it really is, it's such an awesome giving back, and it's so popular. You were describing to me, in some of the early years, you had a line out of the studio, down the stairs, around the block of people waiting,
Yes.
for this. And that was a learning experience too.
It was a learning experience.
But to have that type of response to an event, you're going the right direction.
And that was still when it was invite only. Like I didn't even open it to the public then.
Wow.
That was still just invite only, and that was when I didn't have time blocks. Now we break it down.
So while we're talking about logistics, of course Santa is a major piece of this. And like we already discussed, you actually have Santa.
I have Santa.
You have the Santa. For somebody who needs a Santa, how does that work? How do you get in contact with the North Pole?
So the North Pole has several groups of Santas that help the main man out.
Okay.
You can usually find them in Facebook groups.
Okay.
There are like official Santa groups. I think they have gatherings. Could be in a city near you. But a lot of them also advertise to local photographers.
Okay.
So there are several in my area that advertise to other photographers.
Yeah.
I just happen to have the one, and I've worked with him since day one.
So you've had Santa for 14 years. Wow, that's incredible. And to build that bond and relationship, and that you don't have to discuss how this is going to go because he just knows.
He knows the dates.
Yeah.
I usually give him the dates the same time I'm doing my Santa pictures this year. Like we go ahead and lock in.
Okay. For the following year.
For the following year.
Okay.
And I tend to do mine really early. Part of that is just for production. For my end is just making sure I have plenty of time.
Yeah, for sure. So then the actual space. So you have a brick and mortar studio space.
I do.
And you design a backdrop each year.
Each year.
So I'm assuming that changes from year to year.
It changes every single year.
Okay.
The last 2 years and this year, I also use it as an opportunity to work with another local business. So another local interior decorator has a brick and mortar store. She volunteered to decorate. So we kind of do it together.
Okay.
But she has helped decorate, and I have another store this year that wanted an opportunity to get in front of my client base.